Right,
All
it's
good.
not okay. No worries, no worries. Um, okay, hello. Well, okay, people are still going to be entering. This is still the chilled out phase. We can watch the attendees pour in. But Karen, we can see now that you are indeed in a on the road a little bit. Hey, how's it all going?
Yeah, well, I've just I had a couple of nights at home. I started my tour. Like the book came out in early January, and uh, and I wasn't able to do events then because school holidays, right? No point doing events
Yep.
during school holidays. So my tour really started. It's a sort of self-funded. I've had help from the publishers to set up the tour, but my tour started in early February, and I've had a couple of weeks down in Melbourne and done a few events there and visited a few bookshops. And
Nice.
then last night I had or not last night, a few nights ago, last week I had my launch in Canberra, which is my hometown. I'm from the
Mm.
Yarra Valley, but Canberra's where I live at the moment. Went there for love, followed my husband up there, and
That's
had
what
a
I did.
love. Did you?
That's why I'm up in Queensland. Yeah, I followed a girl up here. My mum's in the chat. She was very sad that day, let me tell you.
Oh, so was mine. She said my husband kidnapped me and took me to Canberra. Um,
But
been
it's
there
your
a long
hometown
time.
now. It's
Yeah,
your
yeah. Well,
hometown crowd.
I've been there since 1992, so all my, writerly friends, and I have many friends there now, and great supporters. So I had a huge launch last week. We had 240 people, and they sold
Holy
out of books,
moly.
Ben. Sold out. They sold over 140 books, so it was
Are you
great.
serious? That's massive for a launch. That's huge. Well
Yeah,
done. You
it was.
are, that is really your hometown. All that
Yeah,
support.
look, it was lovely. I was so supported, and look, I can see all people coming in from everywhere.
Yeah, yeah.
Muralbark's near my parents. Somebody's from Muralbark, Wendy.
Oh, cool.
My folks live down in the Yarra Valley still. Diamond Creek, yeah. I mean, I know this is great. Thank you for coming in from everywhere.
It's cool, hey, to see everybody. Yeah, so this is Ben's book club for people who are new to Ben's book club. We normally come in and we type where we're from. We just love to see everybody. My mum is in the chat, everybody, so you can say hi to Carol. She comes to. Can I be honest? I'll be honest right from the jump. My mum only comes to the ones that look extremely interesting. She's not a big reader. So Karen, you've won my mum over. So you've
Oh, well,
got.
that's cool. It's a book for everyone, I hope.
I think so. I think so. Penny from Brisbane. Hope you're enjoying the humidity up here, man. I nearly died today trying to teach in the heat. Oh man, I can't even begin to talk about it. Coffs Harbour, very cool. A few people saying hi to my mum.
I'll
Morisset,
say hi too. Hi,
Castlemaine.
Carol.
Yeah, she's an excellent, very supportive mum. She used to come to all, I used to be in a punk band, Karen, like a really loud, screamy punk band. And mum would come into every gig and dad, and they'd both watch from the back like this.
Didn't bring their earplugs.
Good job, buddy. Yeah, very supportive.
Oh.
We're here with a wonderful Karen who is very, very kindly beaming in while she's on the road. Um, just to introduce Karen, Karen is an author, a veterinarian, and a podcaster. That's maybe unpack that. Damn. She is the author of five novels: The Stranding, The Lightkeeper's Wife, The Grass Castle, The Orchidist's Daughter, and Sidelines, which is the newest one. Which is the one we're here to talk about tonight. This very excellent novel. You can see Sidelines behind Karen there, which looks
And in
awesome.
my hot little hand.
Yeah. Her work is set in Australian landscapes and communities and explores contentious issues such as dying with dignity, displacement of First Peoples, wildlife conservation, clear felling of native forests, and now modern parenting and junior sport. So I don't know whether we can post in the chat some hands or something. Clap, Karen. Thank you, Karen, for being here. How is life on the road?
Well, it's funny you should say that, Ben, because I'm sitting here in a motel room tonight, and I've got my laptop on top of an esky. I have my my microphone on top of a box. Got my headphones in, and for some reason, I'm sorry everyone about the sort of squiggly camera, but I'm doing the best I can, and I've got my banner in the background to kind of hide some of the psychedelic effects.
Oh, hey, we appreciate that. I don't know whether we've had another person on the book club who has rigged up a little station with the esky and stuff. So we really appreciate you being here. Um, But what has it been like, the reaction from people reading Sidelines? Because can I tell you, on the Ben's Book Club Facebook group, just a lot of love for this book, a lot of good questions, and a lot of interest. So, what has been getting to you from real life people in real world scenarios?
Yeah, Ben, I've been really delighted that it's been a great reception. I've had parents, grandparents, aunties and uncles, coaches, even my sons, the guys who coached him in refereeing in soccer. I mean, this book
Oh,
is a
okay.
have said, wow, I recognize these parents, or some people have said, oh, I recognized a few elements of myself.
Oh, wow, that's
Um,
massive.
and others have said, look, they think the book stimulates a really important discussion, which I'm really hopeful for. I guess that's the underlying reason in the end that I wrote
Mm.
this book. But great feedback and great stories. Like people are saying, "Oh, let me tell you about this," and this is about soccer, but I've had stories about rowing and netball and basketball and
Hmm.
dressage and debating and you name it. Like this really about competition, isn't it? About competitiveness in society. And
Yeah, yeah,
so,
and
yeah,
it's a weird sort of, it's a really strange thing, and you unpack it so well. This idea of parent pressure, and also sort of vicarious living through, and also wanting the best, and it's like love and pressure and
pride.
like, yeah, pride and woundedness, and like all this mix, and it creates this such an interesting world. Um, Before we talk about the book, and I just want to say a couple of quick things in the chat, guys. This is our opportunity to really talk to Karen. If you've read this book, you've got some really cool questions for Karen, please put them in the chat. We love to hear from you all. And Karen, especially, has said that she loves to hear from readers across Australia. So, oh, in the UK, sorry, I saw Ian's here. Ian always tunes in. It's like 3 a.m. or something ridiculous.
Oh, wow, that's
Um,
dedication.
I know he is very dedicated. Can we talk about your podcast really quickly, Secrets from the Green Room? I'm just really wondering, over all the years that you've produced this podcast and interviewed authors, is there any like massive takeaway, if there's one, that really stands out to you from an author where you're like, I'm going to take that and just sort of put it into my own creative mind?
Yeah, I guess there is. And that is that no matter how famous or how polished and high achieving an author is, we all experience doubt and we all
Mm.
experience difficulty in the journey of writing our books. And that is part of the process. And it's something you have to work through when you butt up against that wall. You're going to get there, whether you have to, as Jock Sarong said, work around it like it's a big boulder, find a different way to tap at that boulder from the
Yeah,
side,
that's
or
a cool
whether you have
metaphor.
to go for a walk. Doubt is a normal part of the process and part of the psyche of all authors. And
Yeah, right.
yeah, and that all authors love reading and love hearing from readers.
Yeah, that's, yes, absolutely massive. Yeah, and doubt, absolutely. It definitely is something that can really squash the creative spirit and the drive. And it can, I don't know about you, but sometimes you come to type on the keyboard for the day and you just feel flat and like nothing's working. And you look at it later and you're like, this is terrible. And do you go through those little moments especially, or do you,
Oh,
I'm assuming,
absolutely.
okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm part of that club, the doubt club. But I have learned that basically you have to spend time working through it or do some little writing exercises to loosen yourself up or jump into a
Mm.
different scene or do something slightly different to mix it up a bit and loosen yourself up. And then that seems to make a big difference.
Oh wow, that's really really cool advice. I actually will steal that advice for myself. Thank you, Karen. Um, and a similar question as well, because you've written so many books over the years. I mean, just to scroll back up, since 2008, so you've had a long career that's you've had a lot of success with. I'm wondering what creating all these different worlds and all these novels has taught you about your own creative process. Is there something that you've learned along the way that, I mean, if anyone else is in the chat who is creative at it all, maybe we could take some advice from you as well?
Well, that is a really good question, Ben. And I think what I have surrendered to is accepting that I have my own process and that I can't do it any other way. So I'm somebody who goes, I don't do a heap of planning. I'm not a complete fly by the seat of your pants either. I do a bit of that. I do a little bit of planning and then do a little bit of sorry, I just got distracted by the chat. I'll get back to
No,
that in
no,
a
we'll
second.
get to that one. It's a good question, I think.
And then I dive into it and I just go for it. And so my first draft, I go with any tangents that the characters present. And look, it's a really big mess. And I've tried doing a book where I planned everything really in a reasonable amount of detail. And then you know
Mhm.
what, Ben and everyone, I just didn't feel like writing the book. So
Yeah, because
I've
I'm the same. You know what's coming, and you're like, well, I'm not excited anymore, right?
exactly. And the fun
Yeah,
part of writing is when the characters decide to take you somewhere different, where
yeah,
other than what you were expecting. And if it's fun for me, I think it's going to be fun for my readers. So I do make a big mess and then I've got to sort it out. And that's not
yeah.
so much fun, but
Yeah, yeah. Tell me about it. I'm doing that at the moment with something. I heard an interview with the Coen brothers, who are film directors and writers as well, and they often say that if they know what's coming, then the audience will know what's coming. But if they're surprised by what happens, then the audience will be as well. So I quite like that advice. It makes me feel better about kind of making it up as we go. Cheryl, we will get to your question because I think it's an interesting one. But just before we get to sidelines, just one last question. This is a very similar question as well. But you also list, and I love this in your book, in your acknowledgements, you list a lot of other authors. There's almost a whole paragraph of them. And I was wondering, is there anything in particular about reading other authors that you use as inspiration? Is there anything, and any particular books maybe that you've read that you're like, aha, that's really inspired this one?
yeah, look, as far as reading goes, I did try to read around a lot of sports books and sports. Well, no, there's not so many sports novels out there, really, especially about junior
No,
sport. This is the only one I've ever seen, to be
me
honest.
too.
But
Yeah.
I did read some biographies and autobiographies. So I read Andre Agassi's Open because I was
Oh,
interested in
that's
the
cool.
yeah, I was interested in the pressure that his father put on him and how, yes, he made it to the top, but the massive impact on his mental health. And same with Yelena
Mm,
Dokic. I read her latest book, Fearless, and the abuse that she suffered from her father. Abuse that in any other arena, to use, it's probably not the right word, but in any other context, it would be called abuse, like at a school
yeah.
or something like that. And yet society stood by and watched while her father basically abused her
Yeah.
at tennis courts all around the world. And then by contrast, I read Elise Perry's autobiography, in which her parents were incredibly supportive and were always there for her because, if you are going to go to the top, you need parental support, absolutely.
Mm.
But they always made it fun. And even now, one of her
That's
favorite things
cool.
to do is to go down to the nets and have a throwdown with her father, throw a
Oh,
few balls down.
that's really hopeful. That's really lovely to hear that. I love that. I hope to do the same thing with my own kids.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Thank you for that. We'll come to Cheryl's question. I'd love to start chatting about sidelines. So Cheryl's question is pretty interesting. Um, Cheryl's question essentially is, what was the main aim with the book? And to me, I feel like if I answered it, it was sort of, it could be about all these things. But her question is, was it mostly about the pressure on kids by parents, or then the expectations on families in society? And my feeling was it was kind of like they're joined at the hip a little bit. But what's your opinion there, Karen?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Like, I guess in writing this book, that's what I was trying to explore was what the motivations were for parents getting so invested in their kids' success and what success
Yeah,
is, but also, what those pressures are in society that lead us to have those pressures and expectations. So everything, you're right, Ben and Cheryl, everything is intertwined. And I didn't want to tell you what to think. I want you have space to think about it and discuss it and work it out
yeah.
yourself because I don't have all the answers. Absolutely. I mean, I'm not trying to be didactic with this book. I'm trying to, I guess, turn a mirror on society so
Mm,
that we can look at ourselves. And, this is not my story, but there are parts of me in there. And I learned some things about myself in writing the novel as well.
I love that. Is that one of your main drives with your creativity and with your book writing? Is that you love to sort of explore these big ideas in a way that's through your creative pursuit, which is, writing these novels? Because I always find I don't know all the answers, but I have a bunch of questions. I want to sort of play with it a little bit. Is that how you think about your process as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it does start with a question or an issue that I'm interested in and I can't unpick and that I want to explore. And I'm interested in different perspectives, not my
Mm.
perspective, but how other people come to it. Because, sometimes I've seen some pretty unlikable people at kids' sporting games.
Yep.
But when I wrote my first draft, it was an angry draft sort of about those types of people, even though my characters are fictional. But when I realized that we're not black and white like that. The
No.
whole issue is not black and white, and humans are complex creatures. And it wasn't until I started to till those characters started to show themselves to me, I suppose, as I
Mm.
delved into their lives and their family lives and the pressures they were facing and started to love them a bit, that I began to understand them more and consider the nuance in human behavior, I guess, that leads us to doing things that we're sometimes not even aware that we're doing. We want the best for our kids, but sometimes we can mess that up without meaning to.
Oh man, the other night I had my son Henry, and he hates tomato, but I'm trying to teach him like proper nutrition, and he had this piece of
Good
well,
luck with
he
that.
had man, and he had four little pieces of tomato on his taco, and it was an hour we were sitting there, and I felt terrible for even creating the problem in the first. Why did I give him the tomato? But now, do you know what I mean? Like,
Where do you go from there?
where do you go? Because I've said you've got to eat it. Like, I don't know. It's just parenting, man. Like the most complex thing in the whole world. I don't think all the books in the world can unpack it. But I'm glad your book is here, is in a way to help us unpack a lot of the parenting things we do. Um, Liza says, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name, but Liza says, my daughter and I have experienced so much of the real side of your book. The book felt like it was part of my football life and experience. And I think that's a comment you're getting quite a bit, is that it feels so real to so many different people's perspectives. Um, can we talk about where was the idea? Like, was it just that world that you were interested in unpacking? Was there a moment in time where it was like, ooh, that's a book? Like, what was it that sort of sparked the whole journey to writing this?
Well, there were two things. One was my 14 to 15 years of being a soccer mum, standing on the sidelines watching my own kids play and referee soccer,
Yeah, yeah.
and seeing some interesting behavior in that time, and my own, and being observer of human behavior and storing all these little things away. And the second thing was that, so that for me, books compost for quite a while before they actually take form. And
it's a
so,
good word to use.
well, the
Compost.
ideas do. Like, I come up with the ideas and I take notes, and the ideas sort of simmer, or as I said, compost in the back of my mind. And
Hmm.
what happened was, in 2014, I live in Canberra now. I'm from the Yarra Valley in Victoria, and I sort of grew up in the country, but then moved to an urban existence. And there was a brawl broke out at a kids' game, under 12s in Canberra. And I wasn't there. My daughter could have been in one of those teams. She, as a girl, had trialed for a boys' team, and she missed out on this one of these particular teams because she had an injury. But she was playing
Mm.
with another less serious team. And what happened was, a couple of the kids on the field started getting a bit pushy, and then it turned into fists. And then a parent ran on and
Mm.
grabbed one of the kids by the throat. And then another parent ran on
That's
and was
so
about to
ugly.
hit the first. And a third, gosh knows where the third came from, came on and boofed the second parent, and a full on brawl broke out. And
Wow.
I couldn't believe it. Like, what's going on here? I thought, when I heard about it, because, news like that gets around really quickly. So
Hmm.
that was the trigger, I suppose, that made me think, I really want to try and, were they bad parents, or were they just ordinary parents who, like me, had got a bit carried away? So I wanted to think about the motivations, what the different types of parents we might be, vicarious living through our children, or perfectionist parents that want our kids to succeed at everything, or parents that missed out on opportunities themselves when they were younger, or parents that
Mm.
had unrealistic hopes of their children playing for Australia and all that sort of thing. So
Yeah, yeah.
there was so much to draw on, Ben, to create this story. But yeah, it's working out how to pull that all together, and how to let the characters tell the story or show the story, really, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and it's such a. I always think about this idea of like, there but for the grace of God go I. Like, whenever I'm reading an ugly character like, I think we're fooling ourselves if we've never at least felt like going and giving another parent a bit of a serve about the way they're acting at the football game. Like, how dare you talk that way? And yeah, see, I don't know how much I should talk about exactly, but there's been just at the current football games that we still go to, there have been cheating accusations, and one coach tells his team to play rough with the kids they're not supposed to tackle yet, so play rough on purpose to rough them up, and then we put in a complaint, and then someone's sitting in the wrong spot, so you got to.
Oh yeah,
It just
you're in
seems
the wrong spot. You can't sit there. Your team has to be over. I mean, how does it become like that? What is success? It's not always just winning. I mean, you learn more through your losses than your wins, and you
really
can't
do.
win every week. There's only one team that ends up at the top of the ladder, and the abuse towards the young refs, because you have junior
Oh, that
refs. Yeah, my
man.
my son had to deal with a lot of that. He gave up because he was sick of the abuse. So
Oh, wow. That's
after
actually
six,
pretty.
7 years as a 19, 20-year-old, he said, I've had a great time. I've learned a lot, but I'm just done, Mum. I've had it. I'm sick of being shouted at by coaches and parents.
I think really makes sense. Like, you're there to support this community, you're there to help, and then to be sledged like that and to cop that. It's so silly how we, like, you look at it from the point of view of reading your book, and you can look at these people and you go, this is so silly. Why are they being so silly?
Well, it's
But
easy to say, isn't it?
it
With
isn't it, yeah,
standing back, like it's harder to see
exactly.
ourselves. And I had a guy that I worked for as a vet many, many years ago. He was a lovely guy, and he used to look after all the local homeless people and their pets, and the local drug addicts and their pets, and do things for almost next to nothing. And I said,
Wow.
said to him, how are you managing to do this and stay afloat? And he said, I don't need all that much money, love. But there's only one thing, he said, that I would love to have that I don't have. I'd love to get one. And he said, it's called a retrospectoscope. And I wish I had one, because I'm sure that even though I wasn't appalling, I'm sure that I did apply pressure to my kids when they were playing sport. And I'm sure that influenced their and impacted on their enjoyment. And, it may have led to them dropping out. And there's research that shows that coming out of Melbourne, out of Victoria University, that 1 in 3 people report looking back on their earlier sporting journeys as young people suffering abuse from parents or coaches. And it's the major
Wow.
reason for kids dropping out of sport in their mid-teens. And wouldn't it be good if we could keep them involved for longer by letting it be fun for them, by remembering
Yeah.
why we wanted them to play in the first place? And I guess that's what this book is about, maybe a cautionary tale in some ways, or
Hmm.
to stimulate that discussion to think, oh, how could I be a better sports parent or better parent in general? We
It
try our
really,
best.
yeah, we do, and we're all human beings too. We all gotta,
Yeah,
we're all
absolutely.
kind to ourselves, but it is a bit of like a microcosm, a picture of. It's like it heightens things to a point where it sort of makes you reflect on all other parts of your parenting as well. Like me with the tomatoes with Henry, like, mate, I could have pulled back a little, let's
Oh,
relax a
tomatoes are a
little.
hard one.
Oh, not for my other kid. Oh, sorry. Just I'm not going to get into that. Um, I'm wondering too about this world that you've created, and we have some great questions we'll get to in just a second. But last question on before we get to questions on the chat. I thought you've done such a beautiful job of creating this world and all these characters, but I'm wondering what were the ingredients? Like, did you have a list of things that you really thought, I've got to put that in there because that's going to make it breathe and feel authentic? What were the authentic flavors you needed to put in there?
The authentic flavors were drawing on my life experience, drawing on, you spend hours as a soccer mum walking laps of the field with other soccer parents and talking about the impacts of what's going on their lives, and talking about other people and other kids. And, there's a lot there to draw on, and experiences that seem unjust or unfair. I wanted to write about some of those that seem like, oh, surely that didn't happen, but it does. I
Mm,
think I mentioned in there a referee, a coach, not this, a particular team not being able to get refs for a game, and the coach, one of the coaches, offering to be ref and then making decisions that favored his team. Like, I've seen all of those things.
Yeah.
I've seen them happen, and I've seen punishment sessions, kids being pushed so hard by a bruised coach who was embarrassed because he didn't win on the weekend, and doing punishment sessions that ended up with kids getting injured, and it's all happened. So there was so much to draw from, and I couldn't put it all in, because it sometimes one of my editors said, "Oh, that list is a bit long, Karen. We can take a couple of examples out there." This is the thing. I bet lots of the people listening have stories too, which I'd love to hear.
Yeah, and I bet you there's a few of the stories too that would, like, if you put it in a book, someone would read it and say, "This isn't real. This feels unrealistic." And you're like, "No, that's a real thing." Like, it's just such a strange world. I'd love to talk about Nikki's question here. I thought this was great because I had similar questions. How did you choose which POV to share first? And I'm really curious about the decision to have all your main characters just one after the other. That is such an interesting structural choice. And you were talking before how you sort of, write a little bit by inventing as you go. I'm wondering about that choice because I loved it and it was just really interesting to me.
It was also challenging, I have to say that. But when I wrote the first draft, I had 9 characters. The first few drafts, there were 9 characters. And I didn't think that there was any other way of doing it. Like, if you tried to interlace 9 characters, it could get very messy and you'd forget who was doing what and what was happening. But it became evident over time that there were too many characters, basically from the point of view of being able to get enough depth with those characters. And I also hadn't really worked out whose story it was and how it all hung together. There was no, narrative arc as such. So they were sort of hanging together as separate vignettes. But once I worked out that it was actually Audrey's story, and that everybody fell into place about her, and so I cut 4 characters and added 1, which was Ben, who was not based on you, Ben. He's not a very likable character, and yet I still like Ben because he's one of those.
I'm going to put that as my note because I want to talk about him a bit later because I thought you did a great job. But sorry, continue.
No, but what was I going to say about him? I decided to write it from the perspective of 2 families rather than I had a coach in there and another family and another family.
Okay.
And I decided it was better to go close in on 2 families and get a bird's eye view or a fly on the wall view of their family lives and the challenges they were dealing with, what was going on in the home life and in the kids' lives and all that sort of thing. So I started with Jonica. That was purely random. I did start with her right in the first instance. I just dived in and I just had this vision of a mother. I mean, I have had, not in a black 4-wheel drive Mercedes, but I have had to take my kids to soccer trials at 38-degree heat. And so that little bit of it was from me, but the rest of it, she shaped herself. But could just see this woman pulling up in the car park and her 2 kids getting out and the fury that she would feel going over there. And why the hell are the kids doing this in this heat? It's nuts. And who's this about? Is it most of the kids were there last year. So why are we even having trials?
Are we doing it? Yeah.
And it happens like that, 6 weeks of trials to pick 90% the same kids as last year. So why?
Yeah, and the heat too. Did you ever want to, because I can imagine you writing Ben's section or structuring it and then, wanting to go back to Jonica and giving her point of view on what he's talking about. But you sort of put this restriction on yourself a little bit. Was that a difficult challenge or did you find that really helpful or how did that go?
Well, I guess it was a difficult challenge, but also not, in that you can show how other characters are responding through their body language and dialogue and actions. And so I felt like, I know some people have said they wanted to go back to those individual characters, but there wasn't space really to do that. And it seemed to work to me. It maintained the momentum for the narrative to keep moving forward from one character to the other. And so it's a similar structure to The Slap by Christos Tsiolkas. I haven't seen it all that often, but it really seemed to work for this novel. And even when I cut back to 6 characters, Ben, and then tried to interlace and revisit characters, it was almost like letting the air out of the story. The energy just dissipated immediately. So I thought it has to be this way.
Wow.
And
But there's lots
and
of
it,
experimentation. Like you had to try that stuff out to feel
yeah,
it.
that's why it took 5 years. You know, it's the longest I've taken between books, but I feel like it's my most important book too because of the issues it raises for discussion.
Um, Ian says in the chat he thought both Ben and Carmen were a bit pushy, and I think
Yes, I think so. I agree.
would you? Yeah. So where does that sit for you? This idea of like when is it? When are you too pushy? Can you push at all? And what did you think of Ben and Carmen? Like, how do you think of those two?
Well, yeah, they were definitely pushy parents, putting pressure on their kids in different ways for different
Mm,
reasons. And
Ben
look, there
especially,
are
I thought.
plenty of parents out there that don't pressure their kids, but I think sometimes we forget that that there is a line, and I'm not sure that I know exactly how to define it, and
Yeah.
I'm sure some of the readers would have their own thoughts on this between support and pressure. And we want to support our kids and we want them to enjoy winning, but as I said before, sometimes we can't. And I think it was really interesting. One of the journalists I talked to about this
Mm.
book in the early, just after it came out, she said that she had learned that the best thing she could do as a parent, she would keep her mouth shut. And she would say after a game, no matter what the outcome was, I loved watching you play today. And I thought,
Oh,
oh,
that's
that is so good. My retrospectoscope, I wish I had said that more often.
nice.
And if kids want to just dissect it, great. But if they don't, let them not as well. I think it's
Yeah. It's
we're
good to
all
not. Sorry, you
sorry.
go, Karen.
No. I think we can forget that support can just be actually just being there and cheering them on
Mm.
and cheering the other team as well, and role modeling the sort of behavior we want them to develop as
Yeah,
adults, as
because
good citizens.
yeah, yeah, that's huge. Hey, like I often, when we're in the car after training or after a game and we're driving home, the instinct for me is to be very helpful and point out all the ways that they could have been better. But I've often stopped myself from doing that because it doesn't come across as helpful. It comes across as being quite critical, and it sort of puts more pressure on them to perform in a way. And so I always make sure I say, I love seeing you do that. You took that catch really well. Like I make sure I highlight all the awesome things they did in the game. What did you enjoy? I sort of have to stop myself the urge to be to be analytical, like because that's what I do to myself. But you don't want them playing with that like that lens on them. Hey, you don't want them playing with our dad in the back of their head saying, "Oh, make sure you kick it when you don't throw the ball." And yeah, I guess I'm having a bit of a revelation, Karen, a coming season for football. I think with your book here, so thank you for that.
Well, look, it was really interesting. I don't know if you watched the David Beckham documentary. I'm sure some of the readers here would have done that. And there was a lot of discussion arising after that about parental pressure on kids, because there was discussion about the interviewer spoke to Beckham's parents and
Yeah.
asked the father if he pressured him, and he said, "Oh, not that much. I think he needed it. He wouldn't have gone to the top without me pushing him." And the mother said, "Oh, I think he was pretty tough on Beckham, and I don't think,
Oh, that's
I don't think so."
interesting.
And so there was a discussion on the radio in Melbourne about how to be a better sports parent, and this was after my book had gone to print and everything, so it was really good timing, I suppose. And Maggie Dent was on, and a researcher from Victoria University, and the journalist from the ABC in Melbourne was called Paul Kennedy. He does
Yeah.
ABC TV and radio sports and stuff, and he said it made him think about his three daughters and his approach to the sports. They are a big sporting family. And he
Mm.
thought, so he went home and he asked one of his daughters, he said, "Well, what do you like about sport?" She was 16 and 15, 16 and still participating.
Yeah.
And she said, "Oh, the best thing, Dad, is hanging out with my friends before and after the game." And he thought,
Wow.
"Oh, whoa, well, we are so busy running here and there that we're not facilitating the bit she likes best." And so he made a change as a result of that, so that she got a chance to do the things she liked, which would keep her playing sport.
Sorry, I'm just thinking about all the times I've rushed my kids to get home so we could cook dinner and do the homework before they went.
Oh, I
Maybe I
know,
will.
but
No, but no, I think that's
you
good. Like
can't
this
be a
is
superhuman, but maybe sometimes.
yeah, that's the thing. Hey, like it's just being a bit more relaxed. Like you don't have to drive all the time. You can just be a little bit more chilled out. Helen has put a comment in the chat. Can we please make sure that if you're talking about Ben, the character from Sidelines, you put in brackets afterwards, Ben from the book? Because I thought it interesting, Ben's shock at his unawareness, cluelessness, and I was like, wait, what? What have I,
What have
what have I missed?
I done?
But yeah, she thought it was interesting, Ben's shock and unawareness of the pressure he was putting on his daughter. And I mean, I'd like to talk about that scene, especially where he really finally understands about what he has been creating in his daughter, this sort of self criticism, this depression, even you could say. Um, how did you go about constructing that? Like, I guess, I mean, maybe we can talk about it as well, but I thought you have this element of self harm, I guess you would call it in the book, with your character there, and I thought you handled it really, really well, and I thought it was really sensitively done. But I thought you must have done some real thinking and in thinking of how to portray that. But then the shock of that is sort of what sets Ben. He seems like he's on a bit of an upward trajectory when you leave him. So can we talk about and unpack that a little bit, Karen? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, I guess what I was trying to get at there was firstly Ben's character, but also how
From the,
busy
from the
family
book,
life.
Ben from the book.
Sorry.
Ben from the book, not me.
Oh
It's
yeah,
not my
Ben from the book. Yes, sorry. I'll make sure
No,
I
it's
say
okay.
that every time.
Maybe not
So
every time.
so I mean there are people like Ben from the book who have to win at everything, and he's
Yeah.
he's he's not based on someone I know, but I know people like him that very adversarial, feel like success is the key to life, or what he defines as success, that
Yeah.
has to win at everything, whether it's darts or an argument, and that feels like if his kids experience success, then they will know how to be successful people. So
Mm.
yes, he does seem to be clueless about what's going on with his daughter and the pressure that he's putting on her, but he's super busy. He's caught up in his career. He's trying to juggle all these things and to help his
Yeah.
kids. And I'm not in any way excusing his behavior, but it happens. Life gets hectic, and we're trying to fit all these things in and do things to advantage our kids, and we think
Mm.
it, and support them, and stuff can fly under the radar. And it can go so far as a cry for help in the form of self-harm, like Audrey does in the book, which I very much tried to do with great sensitivity and great care.
I think
um,
you did. I think you really, yeah, I think you captured it so beautifully. Like it wasn't gratuitous, it wasn't shocking, it wasn't there to drive plot. Like it was a real moment in her character. And I especially love like the hope that you have. Like she sort of, you know what I mean? Like it's so easy to write that stuff and just feel like it's the world's crashing down, but she feels so hopeful at the end. Was that important to you as well? I mean, yeah,
Yeah, I
we'll
think
get
so,
into.
because sometimes we get so caught up in the activities we're supporting our kids to do. And, if they want to be good, they have to do so much training that it excludes all other things. But I guess it's in a way a little reminder that there are many things that kids can be involved in that they can grow out of. And if they're not, if they decide to change their minds, maybe we can help them find a different pathway to something that that nurtures them in different ways. So
Mm,
yeah, I guess Audrey found her own path that way. And sometimes we have to learn to trust our kids. It's taken me a long time to learn that myself, that sometimes stepping back is the best thing, to be there for them, but to let them make some choices for themselves.
yeah. We'll thank you for that, Karen. We'll talk about some spoilers now. So, if you guys are coming in from a place where we haven't really been at Ben's book club before, we do go into spoilers just because I think it's great to talk to the author about, the ending of their novel. I love to unpack it. So I guess if you haven't finished the book quite yet, maybe block your ears just for maybe 10 minutes. But speaking of like, what's the word I'm looking for? Really trying situations that these families endure. Ricky's relationship with Katerina, I just thought you just rendered that so well, and the way that he sinks his words into her, like he's just so clever in how he picks her out and sort of uses his manipulation to get her to do things that she shouldn't be doing. So, um, And the way that she's so young too, like she believes all these words. Like I thought her character, you did such a good job. But can you talk about that relationship, that revelation? Because I just thought you handled it really, really well.
Yeah, that was a tricky one to write. I was kind of wanting to, the characters in this novel, I made them around that 13, 14 age group because that is a period of awakening sexuality and when kids start to get interested in other things other than the
Yeah,
interests that their lives have been built up around. And I guess Audrey and Katerina are almost not quite polar opposites, but have, very different experiences.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
and it's not black and white, is it? Like there's
No,
nuance and shades of grey. So was Katerina groomed? Was Ricky deliberately malicious, or did he love her? She loved him. She felt like she gave consent,
yeah,
but is that okay? Like I don't want to provide the answers here. I want
sure,
to
sure. Yeah,
to throw the cat among the pigeons, so to speak. And yes, it's wrong. And the mother Carmen's reaction is understandably shocked and horrified
yeah,
because she missed things went under her radar as well, and it's so easy for that to
yeah,
happen. I mean, that's why Katerina was tired all the time because she's on the phone to Ricky all night
yeah.
and all those sorts of things. But I'm not giving approval of underage sex or
Oh no.
anything at all. But the average age of loss of virginity is supposed to be 12 or 13, and so these are things that can be happening. And I don't know if I've
Mm.
answered your question there, but I
No,
did
no.
want to
I think
show that these things aren't always clear cut and dried.
absolutely, and I
There's
think
shades of grey in all of it.
yeah, and yeah, you're right. Like it is, it's you can't put motive on people, and even people aren't really aware of their own motives all the time as well. Um, Carmen does seem almost the most hurt by the idea that she just didn't know. Like she wanted to know about that part of her daughter's life. Like she just wanted, like that's the big thing for her. It feels like she just needed to. She wanted to give her advice and her love on this particular, pretty huge thing that's happened,
And
and
yet that's
she wasn't.
an area where young girls feel like they're taking control sometimes, or they don't want to share that with their mother because I remember myself, I was a bit older, but quite a bit older, but going through that stage where I didn't want to tell my mum everything. I didn't want her to know everything, and this was my secret, and there was power. Not that wasn't me,
Mm,
but when I had secrets, that was almost power in a way over a way of stepping away from my mother's influence, I guess. And because
that's interesting.
mothers and daughters often have very, very close bonded relationships, and I've had to go through this journey myself of learning to step back and letting my daughter take the reins of her own life and
Mm,
trusting what she knows. And I guess Carmen might have been a bit shocked that this had happened, and it did matter a lot to Carmen because of what she'd been through as well.
yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. And yeah, it's actually a fairly like the characterizations are fairly complex. Like everyone's got their own background, their own past, their own motivations, and then the things they say they want, but what do they really want? What are they really at? And I think, yeah, he's done a really good job with that. Um,
My
Griffin,
mother-in-law always used to say to me, Lovey, human beings are very complex creatures.
yeah, yeah, because when you are doing like, and you said say this multiple times, like when you're doing these things, you're not aware of them. And there's so many different areas in our lives where we're having an effect on people that we're not fully aware of. And then when we're made aware of this effect, that we're like, oh, I really wish I had have known. I would have done something different. But it's almost like our blinders are on. It's such an interesting place to write a set of book, Karen. Can we talk about Griffin? I love that little kid. I love Griffin. Um,
He's not
and
perfect though, but yes, he's
no,
he's
he's
a
not.
he's a gorgeous guy.
Oh, look, he's pretty close. I mean, he's pretty dreamy from Audrey's view. He's pretty good kid. Um, but I just thought it was really interesting that this brawl that happens, the person who seems to be the most devastated is also the character who is the one I loved the most. Like, why was it the decision? It was like all this pressure sort of played out onto almost the purest enjoyer of the game. And it just seemed like a real story for how this works. But can you talk about that decision to have Griffin be the one who sort of copped the worst of that particular instance?
I guess, Griffin personified those rare people with natural talent who probably also have the right headspace to go all the distance, who will be a team player, who are willing to do the work. Like they're the rare people that can actually go, up to a very high level in
So far,
sport.
yeah.
And he was also a person coming out of the greatest poverty of anyone else in the team, probably as well.
Yeah.
And sport can be a way for people to escape, quite humble beginnings or difficult beginnings, and find a way out of financial hardship. But it hangs on a knife edge, doesn't it? Like you're one injury away from the whole thing blowing apart,
Yeah.
or from your career disappearing. And so I guess having had that discussion between, and I love dialogue between Audrey and Griffin when they first meet, and they're at the training together, and Audrey, says she's good at school, and then Griffin says, I'm no good at school, and she says, oh, but you have to be, you can't play soccer forever. And he says, oh, but it's going to be my career, and
Yeah.
the sad reality is that it doesn't take much to lose that career. And I guess
Yeah.
I'm hopeful for Griffin, but a thing can happen like that. But yeah, I suppose it's the injustice of random events, is that sometimes the person who least deserves it is the one who cops it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet
I,
I think there's hope.
Me too. And I think there's hope for him. He seems like he's being a bit more and less single-minded perhaps, and more open to the possibility of finding happiness in other places where we leave him. So I thought you did a really good job there, where he's sort of still, football is still a possibility, but there's lots of other ones now. Like this sort of has set him on a different course. Um, Can you talk about, you started with, sorry, we're going back to a bit of a structural thing, but I thought this was interesting because you started with sort of the climactic event and then you went back 9 months earlier. Was that always part of all the drafts, or was that something that came later? And why did you start it with that punch and then the going back to lead up? Because I love that structure.
Yeah, look, I decided to do it that way because I was interested in what leads to that moment where everything explodes. What are all the little things that have happened in the lead up to that? So that's why I went back to trials and showing you inside those families, but all the incidents that had taken place within and between teams, and then Griffin arriving as a disruptor in the team, and
Mm,
you know shaking up the established hierarchy, because there always is, this is, I'm the striker, I'm the captain, or whatever. And that sort of adds tension and fuels the tension. And then between team issues and parental issues, like in kids in sport, families get brought together on the sidelines that probably wouldn't normally mix together socially.
yeah, yep.
And so, there's an interesting thing to explore of its own. But yeah, I really wanted to show the explosion and leave some doubt about who was injured. I mean, it could be anyone. It could be the ref, it could be a
Yeah,
parent, it could be a player, it could be female or male player, could be
yeah,
anyone. And then go back and try and draw you through to that moment, and then show you the moment in its entirety and the complexity of it through Ben's perspective, Ben the character,
yeah.
and then move on from there to look at the fallout of something like that, and what can happen in terms of the horror for the kids that were involved. I mean, it's a shocking thing to see. Well, I took it further than the brawl that I'd seen and heard about in Canberra, but it had a terrible impact on the kids that were there at that game. From then on, the one that, not the fictional one, the real one, the next game, the parents weren't allowed to go and the kids were really anxious about going. And then at the finals, at the end of the year, under 12s, they had security guards on the gates. And I mean, oh my gosh. So that was why I wanted to use that as the sort of the crux, the linchpin, and then take it from, go back and then through and beyond.
Yeah, I thought it does really draw you through because you're always sort of building to that moment of when it's all going to sort of explode. Yeah, I thought you did. I love the start especially, but I love so much about this book, Karen. I
Oh,
thought it
thank
was
you, Ben. Somebody
really
said there,
fun.
why soccer and why not AFL? Well,
Mm,
I did soccer because that was what I knew, but it could be anything. Like I did grow up in Victoria and I did watch AFL when I was, Aussie Rules when I was a kid. But then when I went to Canberra for love, when I followed my husband up there, he had been he's a scientist, but he had been a professional soccer player in his youth, and he'd played for the equivalent of the A-League back in the old days when
Wow.
Canberra had a team called Canberra City before the Cosmos, and he was goalkeeper. And he also played in the reserves for PSV Eindhoven over in the Netherlands. So when our kids having an urban life instead of the country upbringing that I had, when they started to look for activities, and he said, well, team sport is great and let's play soccer. I don't want them to play rugby, contact sports, or AFL where there's a lot of traffic accidents. Let's do soccer. So I wrote what I knew, but like for soccer, read any competitive activity.
Yeah. It's almost like the particular aspects of the game. Although you do get those aspects really, really well done. I mean, I guess that shows about your depth of expertise with this, but the way that what they had to drill and exactly how Audrey would play in a different way. But I thought all that stuff was captured really well. Um,
There are those moments where it comes together, aren't they? And it's beautiful. And watching someone like Griffin play, there's a great beauty in watching someone who's good
yeah,
at it. It's like a transcendental moment where you can live almost vicariously through that athlete who has the skill and ability. And those are beautiful moments where sometimes, and as a writer, you would find this, Ben, there are moments, for me, they're rare, where it just comes out the way it
yeah,
needs to. And it's like music or like poetry. And you think, wow, how did that happen? But
yeah,
those are the highlights, really, aren't they? And I hope
yeah,
some of those moments came through too.
yeah. No, they did. They did. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to say. The thing we're built for. Coming alive in those arenas and really getting into that sort of flow state with it's like you're built to do this thing, and it's just such a natural feeling. And yeah, I mean, they're rare, but what magic, hey, when you can find that passion for something. um just so everyone's aware, we've only got about 10 minutes left, which if you can believe that, we're nearly done here. But if you've got any last remaining questions for Karen, can we pop those in the chat, please? But we've got one from Ian, which I thought was interesting. But was it your husband that inspired Ben?
I probably wouldn't be married to him now had he been Ben.
No, yeah, yeah,
But,
yeah,
we both feel that we had our moments where we pushed too hard. And I apologize to my daughter. I'm sure that's part of, and she's not Audrey. And as I said, I drew it from I would never write about my own family or about my friends and expose
yeah,
them in that way. So my daughter is not Audrey, but she doesn't want to read the book. She was quite traumatized by her own experiences playing at a fairly high level in football. Having coaches who said it wasn't all about winning, but then they just play their favorites, and they get full games and everyone else is on the sidelines feeling doubt about themselves and not
yeah.
enjoying it, and all of those things. So no, my husband was not the inspiration for Ben. Oh, look, it said ask because Ben was a goalkeeper. Well, I used a little bit of my husband when I said he had the sense to work out that he wasn't going to be a professional because his hands were too small. So of course you use little facts and little threads that but it wasn't him. And Nikki said something there. The only thing that didn't sit well with her was the Greek Orthodox confirmation. I did try to do some research on that and talk to some people, and there seemed to be an age range at which you could do it. So I'm sorry if I did get it wrong, but everything that I read and the people that I talked to said there could be an age range. So yeah, I'm sorry if I got that wrong.
No,
I think that scene largely was to show that sometimes, and I've seen this happen too, the kids get over the friction and the problems before the parents do. And
yes,
even though they would never be best friends, the kids just kind of get on with it. And I've seen this happen too, where the parents are still arguing and hostile with each other over some incident, which the kids have already forgotten about. So I guess I was trying to
mm.
show that the kids are better at healing sometimes than the parents are.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about something you said before, where they had to have security guards for the parents. So the
Yeah.
the parents are the ones who need the babysitters and not the actual
Oh.
children on the field. It's pretty strange, hey? That's a great question, Mandy. Mandy's asking, do you write full time or are you still a practicing veterinarian?
I am still a practicing veterinarian because it is not
Nice.
easy to make a living out of writing. And that's kind of interesting because I have sold nearly 1 million books, a million of my various titles in France, but everyone gets a cut before I get my little bit. But so yes, I still need to work to pay as a vet to pay the bills. And I love my veterinary practice because I don't know about you, Ben, but you can find that you get very inside your head and inside your little writerly cave. And my veterinary work takes me out into the world. It keeps me in contact with people. I love the human animal bond. You will have seen in this book that the animals play a really important role in supporting the mental health of their families. It's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
huge thing for me. And my diagnostic brain is different from my creative brain, so it's good for my brain and keeps me rounded as a person and keeps me in touch with real people
Yeah,
and animals, real animals too.
yeah. I'm being a high school teacher. It certainly can be tricky to fit the time in, but you do end up living a life with more relationships, which I think does inform your writing in a way and makes what you do and the time you get to write even more precious. I think Mandy might be a writer because she's asked there, when do you actually write then if you're working full time? Because a
Well,
lot
I
of
don't
people
work
ask this
full
question.
time as a vet. I work
Um,
part time. I work 2 days a week as a vet, and they're usually pretty big days. And then the other days I'm writing and doing all the other stuff. My kids are now young adults, so my son is 24 and my daughter 21. And for the first time, they've just in the last week both are out of home, and that won't
Whoa.
last. Kids are boomerangs; they'll be back. But I haven't been home since that's happened. But yeah, I go like a mad thing in the morning, Mandy, and do the basic jobs that need to be done, the washing and the hanging things out when I'm home. And then I sit down and I work. I pull the internet out of the wall in my office and I put my phone down the other end of the house because
Smart,
I'm a
very smart.
procrastinator and social media and email distracts me as well as it does anybody.
Yeah. Nice. I appreciate that because I think someone said once like it's the cruelest irony in the world that the thing that we're supposed to be the most productive on is also the thing that distracts us the most,
Yes.
which is our internet, right? And the
Wow.
laptops. Yeah.
It's so easy, Ben, isn't it, to say, oh, I'll just look that up. And then, you go down the rabbit hole, and 20 minutes later, it's like, oh, gosh, I still haven't looked that thing up properly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Yep, I get stuck on that all the time. Or you'll think like, what is a good name for a character? And then you'll Google something and then you'll be in a rabbit hole and then, oh, I'll just check the Instagram and then, oops, there goes
Oh,
writing for the day. Yeah.
yeah, it's so easy for that to happen.
I get
Um,
half an hour in the morning at 5 I wake up. And this morning the question was, do I do 100 push-ups or do I write? I had 15 minutes. I'd lost my time because I was
mm.
procrastinating. I did the push-ups. I did no writing. But
Well,
anyway,
physical
hey,
exercise is important for your mental health too. So, somebody said they read the audiobook, and I would be interested to see what they thought about that, Mandy, and the voices, because I hope, sometimes it really is dependent on how well they read the story.
yeah.
So I'd be interested to see what you thought about
Did it
that,
have
because
multiple? Did you have multiple actors playing the different people, or was it just
no,
one?
no, just one. And I was given a choice of two voices, and Jo Van Ness did the reading, and we selected her because I think she did the especially the teens really well from what I've heard, and I'm really pleased to hear that the audiobook was well done.
Yeah, it seems everyone loved it. Yeah, that's great. Hey, I've never thought of doing this, Karen. This is actually something I've never done. But is there a question you'd like to ask your readers? Is there anything that you'd like to ask them about your book? Like a particular thing that you thought about, or like a character that you were hoping was really good? You don't have to have an answer for this, but I was just curious because we've got people in the chat.
Did anyone have any sympathy for Ben, the
I did.
character?
I did. I thought that was one of the best things you did. Yeah, because he wasn't likable, but I understood him, I thought.
Yeah, no, that's good because I remember when I did read The Slap that most of the characters were unlikable, but when I read their story, I could relate to where they were coming from. I could
Yeah.
understand why they were like they were. And I guess I wasn't trying to emulate The Slap, but I did think it was important to make them fallible. We all have flaws, but also to be as real as possible. So, that's great. I'm glad. No sympathy for Ben, said Barbara.
Barbara's just brutal.
But maybe a little, no sympathy, but maybe a little bit of hope for Ben.
Hopefully. I like that he had an arc as well.
And
Judy's
I suppose my other question would be, do you think that the book might help promote discussion about some of these issues?
Oh, that's a good question. I think definitely. I think this should be required reading. Like you should have a checklist before you enter into a training season, you know? You have to read Sidelines before you go in.
Well, they say word of mouth is the way to get these things around because really it's not about the sales for me. It's about the discussions that I hope will
Mm.
lead to more positivity and encouragement and support around kids' sport and less pressure.
Oh wow! Like I don't know whether you can see here, Karen. Everyone's saying like they would love that. But did you see Sam said we have had discussions in the office already? So it's
Oh,
so
thank you.
cool.
That's great. It makes me so happy. That means I've succeeded in what I hoped for this book.
That's awesome. That's a great note to end on. But I'd love to thank you, Karen, for being a part of everything today. If you have anything you'd like to finish on, just in the chat, just to type something to Karen and thank her for her time. But Karen, thank you for being part of Ben's book club. Really appreciate you.
Well, and Ben, thank you for taking the time to think through everything so deeply and come up with really great questions. I've really so much enjoyed chatting to you and having
Thank you.
everybody else's feedback and comments. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's cool, huh? I love our Ben's book club audience. They're always really thoughtful. Next week, next month, gang, we are reading the new Lee Christine book, Glenrock. Have you read this one, Karen, at all? You've
I
seen this one
haven't
around?
yet, so it hasn't been out long. So
Yeah, that's true. Hey, I think I might have got an early copy actually, sneakily. Really cool book, really fun mystery, a bit of blood, but it's not too graphic. Like it's a good, fun, detective kind of stuff. It's really fun, and really cool setting as well. At Glenrock, which is, I mean, that's on the cover. Those are the actual stairs of Glenrock, sort of I think it's a national park, but really cool book. Cool cover, by the way, too, Karen. Sorry, I didn't mention this.
yeah, I think it speaks to I think it
Yeah,
speaks well to the novel. It's sort of even the colors of the uniforms, they've tried to get them right.
yeah,
The red and white, and they tried to get the stripes on the girls, the blue and white stripes. But yeah, thank you. I like the cover too.
yeah. It's brilliant. All right, so everyone go out and buy Sidelines for all the parents that you know. Thank you, everyone, for being a part of tonight, and I'll see you at the next one.
Thank
Toodaloo. Thank
you,
you,
and thank
Karen.
you.